Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin our services, if we can please kindly turn off all cell phones or electronic devices, or please place them on silent. Thank you.
We learn in the book of Psalms. As a mother has compassion for her children, so may Adonai our God have compassion for all the family members and friends of Cynthia Rosen, who we come here to remember today. God knows how we are fashioned. God remembers that we are dust. Our days are like grass. We flourish as the flowers of the field. A wind passes over us and we are no more. But we trust that God's compassion is everlasting. God's kindness to children's children endures age after age, unchanging. We begin our service by reciting Psalms, thus linking Cynthia's life to our ancient tradition, to the Jewish people, and to the eternity of God.
Shir lama'alot Esaina Eharim Me'ain Yavo Ezri Me'im Adonai Ose Shamayim Baretz Al yitin lamot raglecha, al yanum shomerecha. Hine lo yanum velo yishan shomer Yisrael. Adonai shomerecha, Adonai tzilcha, al yad yaminecha. Yomam hashemesh lo yakeka, v'yareach balayla. Adonai yishmorcha mikol ישמור את נפשך, אדוני ישמור צאתך ובואך, מעתה ועד עולם.
I lift my eyes to the mountains, from where will my help come? This is a question the psalmist asked thousands of years ago, perhaps at a time of sorrow like this one. And here was his answer. My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way, for your garden will not slumber. For the garden of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. Adonai is your protection, a guardian at your right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. Adonai will guard you from all harm and guard your life. Adonai guards your going out and coming in, now and forever. Mizmor LeDavid. Adonai roi lo echzar. Bino deshe yarbitzeni amei minuchot yinah haleni. Nafshi shovev yancheni b'maglei tzedek lema'an shemo. Gam ki elech b'gei sal mavet lo irara ki ata imadi. Shiftecha mishantecha heme yinachamuni. Taroch lefanai shulchan neged sorarai. Dishanta v'ashemen roshi kosi revaya. Ach tov v'chesed yirufuni koyimei chayai. V'shat v'veit Adonai le'orech yamim. Those were the Hebrew words of Psalm 23, also known as the Shepherd's Psalm because it guides us through difficult moments like this one. I invite you, if you would like, to join with me as we recite it in English. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me the green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. In synagogue on Shabbat morning, we'll begin reading the book of Bamidbar, the book of Numbers, the fourth book of the Torah. But it's already in the first book of the Torah, the book of Genesis, that we learn that when a loved one passes away, it is members of the family who come forward to share stories and memories. And as that ancient tradition will continue here today. As first we'll invite Cynthia's daughter, Amy, and then her grandchildren, Skylar and Lee, to represent the family speaking about Cynthia today. Amy.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming today. And I know that everybody has their lives, and I appreciate you setting the time aside to come. There's one person that I want to mention that isn't here today, and that was my mom's caretaker, Marnie Nicholson. She came on board with my mom on March 1st, 2020. And I guess you all know that immediately thereafter, the world shut down with COVID, and the two of them were locked in together for the next 3 years. And they formed such a special bond, and Marnie was amazing. She treated my mother like she was her own mother, and she was so good to her, and she really was a part of our family as well. Unfortunately, she could not be here because the day that my mother passed, Marnie was heading back to the Philippines to be with her family. So she was able to say goodbye to my mother and leave unencumbered and know that my mom was resting peacefully. So I just wanted to say thank you to her. I wasn't really sure how to approach a eulogy about my mother. So the way that I felt was best was to write her a letter. So I'm going to try to read it best that I can. Dear Mom, I was going to speak about you, and I wish I could speak to you, so I'm writing this letter. There is so much that I loved about you. You were a very special, gracious, beautiful woman. Not just on the outside where you were a stunner, but on the inside as well, where you were even more beautiful. You were kind and gentle, and you didn't have a mean bone in your body. When I think about you and your quiet strength, I'm proud to say I am your daughter. You were the glue of the family. You so enjoyed being together with everyone, and so proud of your 4 children, 10 grandchildren, and 12 great-grandchildren. Growing up, you were the one that kept the whole household intact. And though Dad thought he did, we all knew it was really you who ran the show. He traveled all week long, and at the age of 29, you already had 4 children under the age of 7 to raise, getting us all up and dressed, shuttling us to our various activities, making meals, and keeping everything in line. You did so with grace and dignity, and somehow made it look easy. When I think back on it now, you rarely got a break. We even came home from elementary school for lunch every day, so you didn't even get the whole day while we were at school to run your errands and get things accomplished. And when we got home, you had lunch prepared and ready on the table for us before we had to head back out. You were always so thoughtful. And though as a child I didn't like being sick, I used to love when I was, because you would go to the drugstore to get my medication, and you would come home with a gift for me every time, whether it be a coloring book or a toy or some other token. It was the little things that you did like that that showed your true character. You always made the holidays so special, using the good china, decorating, following traditions, and making new ones. The hot and cold game that we used to play at Hanukkah, the Passover Seders, Rosh Hashanah dinners, Yom Kippur break the fast, Sabbath dinners, birthdays, etc. When we used to take trips to New York to see our grandparents or Antoinette and family and go through the tunnel, you taught us this silly song to keep our minds off of the fact that we were actually riding under the Hudson River in an underground tube. I'd sing it now, but it's probably not such a great plan. I don't want to clear the room. The house at the shore presented an opportunity for the various generations of our family to be together and spend weekends together. Again, creating new traditions, and mostly just enjoying, hanging out, eating, playing games, laughing, and going to the beach. There were so many good times there, and you always made sure that the house was stocked, mostly overstocked, and gave us a reason to want to be there. We played multiple mean games of Scrabble every weekend and really had a lot of fun. There were so many cute and funny aspects to you and funny things that you did and said that were forever entertaining and endearing, even though you didn't even realize you were being funny. You were a good cook and renowned for your Jell-O molds and marinated vegetable salad. We all loved when, in your own words, as you used to say when we sat down to eat, hearty appetite. The kids always thought you were saying party appetite, and they've kind of picked up that saying. I'll never forget the time in Ventnor when you accidentally gave Dad his nighttime medication in the morning, and since part of that was a sleeping pill, he fell asleep on his way to synagogue and crashed the car. Oops. Then, as if that wasn't bad enough, you even decanted some Tylenol PM into a regular Tylenol bottle, and when Keenan said he had a headache and asked for some Tylenol, you said, "Oh, it's upstairs in the medicine cabinet." He went upstairs, took some. Oops again. We then went to Ethan's house for a barbecue, and he ended up asleep at the house for the whole day and missed the entire barbecue. I'll never forget your sneeze. It was the cutest. Never one at a time, always in multiples. And she was like, "Acha, acha, acha." And then we would all have to say in Yiddish, "Gesund wachsen leben." It used to drive me bonkers when no matter what I said, you would burst into song about it. I would ask you a question, and there would always be a song. And that's what it was very frustrating at the time, but entertaining. You always said there was a song for everything, and it's true. Drinking was not something you did very often. It was always clear when you had had a singular sip of Manischewitz wine on Shabbat. Your nose would immediately turn red, your cheeks would flush and glow, and you would say, "I feel accelerated." And then you would be completely silly. Clearly, your grandchildren have honed that skill on your behalf. Obviously, alcohol wasn't your specialty. Another time at the shore, one of the boys had some friends over, and you said, "Would you like a beer?" And she was so excited and had the cutest smile. And the guy said, "Okay, thanks." So you went to the shelf, Mom, and we had a stash of exactly one beer. And she took it off the shelf, you gave it to him. And he took one sip, and he practically spit it out. The look on his face is memorable. Apparently, you were not aware that beer is supposed to be chilled before drinking it, and it was hot. Needless to say, he didn't ask for another one, nor did he finish that one. The funny story of when you're in the hospital recuperating from surgery and you were doped up on something, you stayed up all night ordering from QVC box after box after box of items for several days with no recollection of having done so. Poor Dad practically had a conniption when all of these, what seemed like hundreds of packages, arrived at the house. And you pled no contest, no memory. We kept none of it, as it was all some really weird stuff that we had no use for whatsoever. Lids with no pots, strange keychains, and not just one of each, but as usual, you thought of your family and you bought about 20 of each one of them, so everybody could share. You were always so cultured, and you loved the fine arts and symphonies and orchestras and watching educational TV and interesting programs. Your little secret was that your favorite TV show was Naked and Afraid. Like, who knew? What? A bit out of character, which only added to the humor of it. And in your later years, Steve Harvey and Family Feud was on all day long. Must have been on some sort of 24-hour repeat loop. And you said it was educational. The survey says, I don't think so. You didn't learn to drive till you were in your 20s, which was admirable, but it was not one of your best skills. I used to think it was funny when you would brake and you'd put your arm out across from me, as if it was going to keep me safe. And unfortunately, I inherited that fine habit, which my children will attest was ineffective at best. Mom, you were multifaceted and much more than met the eye. Not many people leave behind a tangible thing that exemplifies who we are. But as you see, all of these talus bags here are the embodiment of the love and dedication to your family. Each bag is created and tailored specifically and personally for the recipient, intricate and detailed. Each one created individually and took 2 years to make. Every single stitch, every one of the stitches in all 13 of these bags was done with your hands, with love. 2 years each. That's 26 years of your life. These beautiful creations are long-lasting, visible reminders of your love and dedication to your family. The collaboration of the planning and the implementation of creating these works of art that will live on forever was an incredible process and a labor of love. However, your real legacy, Mom, and the one you should be most proud of, is right here. These 33 members of our nuclear family, all smart, accomplished, and unique human beings, all individuals of their own right who treasured you, loved you, and appreciated you so much. You used to call all of us quite frequently, every day, and though we weren't always able to answer the phone when you did, many of us, I have found out, including myself, have saved your voicemails over the years. So now, even though you aren't here to speak to us, we can always hear your voice and the love in it whenever we want to. So thank you, Mom, for being the example of love and light who we will always be proud of, the brave and quiet hero of all of us. I love you. Rest in peace.
Thank you, Amy. Skylar.
Hello, everyone. I'm Skylar, one of Cynthia's many grandchildren. I'd like to thank you all for being here today and showing your love and support for someone who's cherished beyond measure, my Bubby, Bubbles, or Bub. As my grandmother, I found her to be an inspiration. She was immensely talented in many aspects, whether that be singing, playing piano, or needlepointing. Her handwriting was an art form in itself, showing exactly how thoughtful and caring she was through a single handwritten letter. Both her and my Zeta also had a knack for art and collecting. Ever since I was young, I was most drawn to her jewelry. She always wore the most unique and fascinating pieces of art that were unlike anything else I had ever seen. But it wasn't about the beauty of each piece, but the meaning behind it, because every piece did have its meaning. This was one way I came to learn about my grandmother's life, through the storytelling of her adventures sparked by the beautiful souvenirs she carried from them. She could quickly recall the origin of each piece, from which country, on which trip, and how it was even made. Even if it wasn't from a faraway place, it led to the unraveling of another piece of the long and loved life my beloved Bubby had lived. Fast forward to more recent years, it was Bubby trying to catch up with my life. As her adventures had slowed, mine were only just beginning. If you were lucky enough to be in Bubby's contacts, I'm sure you're aware of her renowned phone calls. They usually went one of two ways. When I picked up, we would talk about college or any trips I was planning on taking, or which great-grandchild she'd seen most recently. But if I happened to not pick up, you can bet she was leaving a voicemail. I almost completely forgot I had years of recordings of her voice until sitting at home this past Sunday, when the illustrious voicemails got brought up in conversation. I came to realize I had countless messages from Bub spanning 6 years back, each one beginning with, "Hello, Skylar, this is your Bubby calling," and never failing to end with, "I love you very much." When re-listening to them, my favorite must have been the happy birthday voicemail. Her boisterous singing rushed through the speakers, bringing along a few tears, but mostly smiles and laughs to all our faces. No matter what, I could count on Bub to make me smile, and she can count on me for the same. Just looking into each other's big blue eyes, who would be giggling together in a matter of seconds just because. But that's what unconditional and genuine love does to you. I'm lucky enough to have exchanged countless amounts of I love yous and I love you mores with someone who never seemed to run out. I know she can rest easy knowing her love will live on with the endless amounts of people she shared it with. Thank you.
Thank you, Skylar. And now we'll hear from Lee.
Much harder to speak it than it is to write it. Bubby Bubbles, I love and miss you already. I'm very lucky and grateful that I've had you in my life for as many years as I've had. Although I'm crushed to see you leave the physical world, I know that you'll never be gone, as you live inside of me and all those that are here today that you impacted in such a positive way. Your legacy is carried on by your 4 kids and their spouses, 10 grandkids and spouses, and 12 great-grandkids. I'd like to speak about a few things that you have taught me in my life and that I admire about you. Number 1, put love and care into anything you do and do it 100%. The tallest bags that you've created for your kids and grandkids are remarkable. They are pieces of art and beyond impressive. You would spend several years carefully planning and executing on every last detail to make them perfect. Every time that I'm at shul, I get stopped by people who ask me about my beautiful tallis bag. But what has always impressed me more about you than your craftsmanship is the love that you continuously put into each tallis bag you've made. I can feel your love when I open my bag and see how thoughtfully you constructed every part of it, including the inscription from you on the inside. I want you to know that I think of you every time I use it. This same love was felt when I ate your delicious cooking or received cards from you in your beautiful calligraphy handwriting. There's a love and warmth that I've always felt around you that is so special. Number 2, I admire how happy you always were and how you always seem to enjoy each moment in life. You appreciate the important things in life like being with family, and you experience so much joy from it. It's easy to focus on what you didn't have in life or what was going wrong, but instead you always focus on what you had and cherished it. In my 38 years with you, I can honestly say that I never saw you unhappy, complain, or speak negatively about anyone. Anytime that I came to visit, I was always welcomed by a big smile and your loving and caring nature. Number 3, you're never too old to have fun and keep doing what you love. Bobby, you always loved to sing and perform, which you did up until recently. I still remember at my daughter Elle's first birthday party how, despite being 87 years old at the time, you wanted to perform a song for everyone because it was something that you loved to do. During Passover each year, you would play a few songs on your piano during the Seder, including Dayenu, Had Gadya, Hatikva, and America the Beautiful. I was not blessed with a beautiful voice and a musical talent like you to continue this tradition, but I will miss it, and I will think of you during each Seder, and in my head, I can hear your beautiful voice and see your infectious smile. Number 3, always keep on learning. Bobby, in your 80s, you learned how to text. This is something Zeta could never figure out. I think you learned to text because it's a way you can stay in touch with all the people that you loved. And lastly, number 4, I'm so impressed how you were able to be an amazing mom to 4 kids, as Amy said, at the age of 29. Bubby to 10 grandkids and 12 great-grandkids. But more than that, how you were able to have enough love and time, love in your heart to love all of your offspring equally. They say that each time you have a kid, the love inside of you multiplies. And this is definitely true for you. You're one of the most loving people that I've You are one of the most loving people that I've ever met, and when I think about you, I can feel your love and warmth. I love you, Bubby. I'm going to miss you more than you'll ever know. I feel very lucky that you're my Bubby. Please take care of Zeta. And my dad up in heaven. I love you.
Thank you, Lee and Skylar and Amy, for sharing those beautiful reflections about your Bubby and your mom. You know, we're currently in the Jewish calendar, the season of counting the Omer. So we've been counting the days from Passover until Shavuot, and each day we've been reciting a blessing. Today is the 43rd day of the Omer. And by reciting a blessing on each day, we're reminded to appreciate all of the daily blessings that we have and to do what we can to make our days count. This was a lesson that Cynthia certainly understood. Throughout her 94 years, she knew how to make her days count. And even more than that, she helped all of you make your days count. She did this for her beloved Norman, Zichrono Livracha, blessed memory, her husband for 68 years, for her sister Annette and her family. And Cynthia also, as we heard just a few snapshots of, brought so many blessings to her children, to Beth and to Jeff, Zichrono Livracha, and Andrew, to Ethan, Zichrono Livracha, and Sherry, to Keenan and Susan, and to Amy, to her grandchildren, to Brent and Allison, Dean and Jennifer, Wade, Andrew and Jessica, Lee and Lindsay, Corey and Grace, Dylan, Skylar, Chad, and Dakota, and her 12 great-grandchildren. What an incredible blessing. It is because Cynthia made her days count and helped you make your days count that we know that her memory will always be for a blessing. Cynthia grew up in the Bronx with her parents, Charlotte and Benjamin, and her sister Annette. They lived in a small one-bedroom apartment. Cynthia and Annette shared a sofa bed, and they each had only one drawer for all of their clothing. Beth, you said that your grandmother, Charlotte, used to make seders and invite many people into their tiny apartment, and the kids would crawl under the table and tie their shoelaces together. You also told some funny stories that your mom loved to tell about her childhood, like when she was in elementary school and the teacher was teaching about plants and said, "This is for Cynthia." And Cynthia stood up and walked to the front of the class thinking it was for her. Or how she used to tell you all how she used to walk to school uphill in both directions. And when it was cold, she would buy a hot baked potato from a street vendor to keep her hands warm. It was unclear if that one was true. And then there was the story about how she got her blonde hair, which we can save the details of for Shiva, I think. What is clear is that Cynthia grew up in a loving home that rooted Cynthia in the values that she would bring to her family. She went to City College, where she took steno and typing and worked for a DA named Eliezer Lipsky, who was a writer. One of the books he wrote was called The People Against O'Hara, which was made into a movie, and Cynthia typed the manuscript up for him, and she was always very proud of that. She also worked the switchboard and learned to write shorthand, something she would use her whole life, even though it made her lists and phone messages impossible for anyone else to decipher. And it was while Cynthia was a student at City College that she met Norman. Now, I look back on my notes from Norman's funeral after he passed away 5 years ago, and I found what Cynthia said about the story of how they met. Here's what she said. When she was at City College and Norman was at NYU, their families both rented rooms in a big house in Far Rockaway one summer. There were showers outside the hotel so people could rinse off from the beach, and it was there that they met. And then she stopped. And then Beth and Amy and Keenan prodded her on. and she admitted there was a bit more to the story. Actually, Cynthia met Norman's mother first. And Norman's mother liked Cynthia and thought that she'd be a good match for her son. So she influenced Norman to go out with her, being that Cynthia was a nice Jewish girl and even one with blonde hair. Cynthia said that she was attracted to Norman's humor. They would take the same train to go to work from Rockaway to New York, and Cynthia said that she would be sitting with her friends and Norman would suddenly stick his head in between the seats and give an enthusiastic "hi." She said that he was very persistent, as I'm sure we can all believe. But it worked, and they were married on April 8th, 1951. And as you said, Andrew, for 6 to 8 years, your bubby was the yin to your Zeta's yang. They were a formidable pair who raised 4 children together and saw the blessings of 10 grandchildren and 12 great-grandchildren. Cynthia and Norman made their days and their years count. After they were married, they lived in the Bronx, and that's where Beth, Ethan, and Keenan were born. Norman's job as a traveling salesman brought them down to Elkins Park, where Amy was born, and then they moved to Cherry Hill. With Norman traveling all week, as Amy said, it was left to Cynthia to run the household, which she did confidently and efficiently. She was well organized, and Beth, you said that when all of you woke up in the morning, your mom was already dressed and ready for the day. She had put her face on, as she liked to say. She made sure that you all had what you needed for school and schlepped you to all your games and activities. And Amy, you added that your mom never complained about being on her own. In fact, she never complained about much of anything throughout her life, and that she was always sweet and kind and stoic. She held everything and everyone together. Keenan, you said that your mom was also a pretty good cook then, but what you had to watch out for was the expiration dates and those things that hung out in the fridge for a while. Being a child of the Depression, Cynthia did not like throwing out food, so she didn't, even when she probably should have. She really made her leftovers count. But what you could also count on even more from Cynthia was her love of music. She was a very talented musician. She could play instruments by ear and also had a beautiful singing voice. She loved concerts, shows, and theater, had tickets to the Kimmel, the Man, the Academy of Music, the Philly Pops, and elsewhere, and she loved taking all of you, her children and grandchildren, to the shows. And you all appreciated going, though some places more than others. Dean, you said that you got some good sleep at the orchestra, and you weren't the only one. But Cynthia's love of music also infused your holidays with meaning, especially Passover. As Lee said, Norman would lead the Seder, and Cynthia would play on the piano. Andrew, you said this is part of what made them a great tag team for the holidays. And they did all of the holidays. Beth, you said that in your mom's quiet way, she did everything top-notch. She would start by setting the table well in advance, using her finest china, sterling, crystal, everything. And Keenan, you recalled how your parents would invite the whole neighborhood over for after Rosh Hashanah services. And Brent, you mentioned the Yom Kippur break fast that seemed to bring all of TBS to their home after the holiday ended. And of course, also there was Shabbat. Each week, Norman would come home from traveling, often with flowers for Cynthia, something she loved. And Cynthia would make sure that everything was ready in the dining room, where they would light the candles, say Kiddush and Hamotzi, and stay together until after Birkat Hamazon, when then things would break up. It was a meaningful moment of the week that everyone could count on. And Shabbat dinners usually carried over into Shabbat services at TBS the next morning. Norman and Cynthia were fixtures at TBS for decades. There were so many Rosen family simchas to celebrate, holidays to mark, and of course activities to be involved with. Cynthia was active in our sisterhood for many years. One of the big projects was Mishloach Manot for Purim. She would make the bags of goodies. Beth, you recalled how your mom would get brown lunch bags and put them on the kitchen table with all sorts of treats, and the whole family would help pack them. And Amy, you also recalled your mom's adult bat mitzvah that she celebrated at TBS. And of course, there was her participation in Makelat Bet Shalom, the TBS choir, which Cynthia's beautiful voice contributed to for so many years. Now, I found this note in the family file that I took a look through the other day. We already went through your report cards when Norman passed away, so we don't need to do that again. But it's a beautiful letter from Rabbi Lewis to Cynthia that's dated October 13th, 1978. Listen to what it says. Dear Cynthia, I want to thank you in my name and in the name of the congregation for having exalted all of us. Through your voice, but even more through your heart, you made the services for the High Holy Days this year a rich and meaningful experience. You set a beautiful tone. It was against this backdrop of heart and voice that we were able to raise our voices in prayer to the Lord on high, to the throne of the Creator. For your cooperation throughout the year, for your devotion and dedication, we thank you. May you be inscribed for a year of health, of creativity, and happiness together with your loved ones. Cordially, Rabbi Albert Lewis. In tribute to Cynthia's love of music and her many years with the TBS choir, we have some members of the choir who are with us here today. And I'm going to invite Debbie Zimmerman and Marty Kanoff and Julie Bannett to come up to join Cantor Cohen as they'll sing together Oseh Shalom Bimromav, one of our classics and a song that I'm sure was much beloved by Cynthia, as we honor her memory.
Oseh Shalom Bimromav, Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael, V'yimru Amen. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, V'yakol Yisrael, Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, V'yakol Yisrael, Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, V'yakol Yisrael, Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, V'yakol Yisrael.
Thank you, Debbie and Marty and Julie and Cantor Cohen, for that beautiful song in memory of Cynthia. We know that community was important to Cynthia, and friendship was too. And her closest friend for decades was Ruth Lang. And Ruth sent a text to Amy after Cynthia passed away. Ruth wasn't able to be with us here today, but she asked that it be shared for Cynthia. This is what she wrote. 68 years of the most beautiful, wonderful person I've ever known. We were confidants to each other like no other. I miss her already. And then Ruth added, when Cynthia was born, her parents knew this was a very special person, so they threw the pattern away because they knew there would be never another Cynthia. This is what was told to me by Charlotte, Cynthia's mother, many, many years ago. Certainly, Cynthia was unique in many ways, and always someone that you could count on. We know Cynthia was thrilled when her family grew and the grandchildren came along. She was so happy she got a nurse's uniform, and after each grandchild was born, would come over for a week dressed in the uniform to help care for the baby. She loved babies. And as we heard from Skylar and Lee, you all loved your bubby. I'll share a few more reflections from some other grandchildren. Andrew, you said that from the outside, your bubby seemed like the prototypical suburban housewife. But when you looked deeper, you saw how much depth there was to her. She spoke 3 languages, played any instrument by ear, and really valued studying and learning. And Dakota, you said that your bubby always took an interest in what you did, and especially liked to help cultivate those interests. You recalled enjoying drawing when you were younger, so Cynthia went out and got you an art kit with colored pencils, paints, and paper so you could make art. She loved nurturing your creative and artistic side. Wade, you said that your bubby really made an effort to get to know each one of her grandchildren. She made you each feel special and expressed a real interest in the things you were involved with. And Corey, you recalled sleepovers at your grandparents and how the room was a little bit scary with all the clocks that were in it. Cynthia and Norman, one of their collections was clocks, and they all went off at different times. Amy, you said that none of them were set to the same time, and that when it was time to change the clocks, it was a full-day activity. Chad, you said that though the last few months were difficult, you were impressed that your bubby always remembered everyone's name. And you also said that you appreciated how she would often call and text you, even though sometimes it was a little much. But you appreciated how much she cared. And you also said that your bubby was such a kind soul, who was never mad, never sad, and always lifted up everyone's spirits. And we mentioned those beautiful tallis bags that Cynthia lovingly created, 13 of them. I remember how proudly she would show off each one to me at TBS as we got to a grandchild's bar or bat mitzvah. They were so important to her, and they're such an incredible symbol of how she wove together the threads of the values that are most important to her: family, Judaism, thoughtfulness, love. I know that each one of you will always treasure those tallis bags and think of your bubby and her values whenever you use them. When asked about lessons that Cynthia leaves you with, Amy, you began by saying the importance of family. And Brent, you added, be kind. You said that you never recall your bubby getting angry. She was always so positive and beautiful on the inside and out. Keenan, you said that your mom always tried to make everyone feel good about themselves and supported, as she did for you throughout your life. And Beth, you said that you all used to say that your mom was like a cat with 9 lives. That's because Cynthia had more than her fair share of scary moments, from a motorcycle accident from a teenager to the terrible house fire in 1972, where Keenan and Cynthia had to jump out from the second-story window, something that she would do only once she knew for sure that all of her kids were out of the house. Of course, there are other health scares and challenges and the losses of Jeff, Ethan, and Norman. But in the face of all of it, and even these last few months as her health declined, Cynthia continued to be her kind and stoic self, determined to move forward and appreciate her blessings of family, of community, and of friendship. Cynthia made her days count. That practice of counting the Omer, reciting a blessing as we count each day for 7 weeks, teaches us to be aware of the blessings we have in every day of life, large and small, and that we do our utmost to make each day and each person count. This is what Cynthia did throughout her life, and her example will continue to teach us this important lesson. And by learning it and living it, we will ensure that her memory will always be for a blessing. We rise for a final prayer.
El male rachamim shochen b'amromim Hamsei menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashechina B'malot kedoshim u'teorim kezohar harakim hasirim Et nishmat Tzivia bat Binyamin v'shemda Shalecha l'olama Began Eden dei menuchata Ana bal rachamim Hastirei beseter kenafecha leolamim Utzror bitzror achayim et nishmata Adonai hu nachalata V'tanuach b'shalom al mishkava V'nomar amen Amen.
El Mali Rachamim, exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure. To the soul of Cynthia Rosen, who has gone to her eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. May she rest in peace, and let us say, Amen. You may be seated. From here, we will head to Locustwood Cemetery for the burial. And after that, the family will be sitting Shiva at Beth's home, 1754 Russet Drive in Cherry Hill. There'll be a minyan there, a service there tonight at 7. Then tomorrow, they'll be sitting Shiva as well in the afternoon from 12 to 4 with the service at 7. And they'll continue sitting Shiva from 12 to 4 on Friday, Sunday, and Monday. And there'll be services again on Sunday and Monday at 7 p.m.